When James left, it felt like the world had shattered beneath me. I remember standing in the doorway, watching him walk away, not looking back, and I felt my life crumble. We had been together for 10 years, and though I wasn't blind to the cracks in our marriage, I never imagined it would come to this, him just leaving. I thought our love was something we could rebuild, but that hope was cruelly ripped away. The house felt empty. Even the walls seemed to echo his absence. The first few days after he left were the worst. The sadness weighed on me like a heavy blanket. But it wasn't just sadness. It was rage, confusion, betrayal. How could he walk away like that? How could he leave me with nothing but an empty bed and broken promises? I couldn't talk to my friends. I couldn't even talk to myself without wanting to scream. I was angry with him, but I was angrier with myself. What had I done wrong? Was I not enough? The shame consumed me. It was easier to blame him, to feel like he was the one who destroyed everything. But deep down, I knew I was just as broken as he was. The relationship had been strained for a while, but we never discussed the real issues. I had invested so much of myself into the marriage that I had lost who I was. And now, with him gone, I had no idea who I was supposed to be. One night, about 2 weeks after he left, I met someone at a bar. His name was Alex, and he was charming, attentive, and didn't know anything about my past. I don't even remember how it happened, but that night, I found myself in his arms, seeking comfort, warmth, anything to fill the void James had left behind. I told myself it was just a distraction, that it meant nothing. But that was a lie. In that moment, I wasn't just trying to forget my husband. I was desperately trying to feel wanted again, to feel that I wasn't invisible, that I still had value. The next morning, shame flooded me. What had I done? I felt disgusted with myself, but the emptiness inside didn't go away. I continued seeing Alex sporadically, each encounter pushing me further into a downward spiral. I told myself I wasn't cheating. It was a form of self-care, a way to take control of my life again. But deep down, I knew I was using him, just as I had been used. I was a broken person seeking solace in anything that could numb the pain. Weeks turned into months, and I was still struggling to pick up the pieces. I wasn't sure who I was anymore. My guilt over the affair weighed heavily on me. But the loneliness and desire to be loved by anyone, even if just for a fleeting moment, kept me trapped in this unhealthy cycle. Then, one day, I had a moment of clarity. I sat down, completely exhausted, and realized something. I had been running away from my pain, trying to fill the emptiness with someone else's presence, but no one could fix what was broken inside me. I had to do that on my own. I ended things with Alex, and slowly, I started to rebuild my life. The emotional baggage I carried from my failed marriage and my reckless decisions was heavy, but I started to confront it. I began therapy, worked on understanding my own needs, and started regaining my independence. I learned that self-worth couldn't come from someone else. It had to come from within. James never came back, and as hard as that was to accept, I realized it was for the best. I couldn't keep holding on to a relationship that no longer served me. The unthinkable actions I had taken were just steps in a journey of growth. And while I had hurt myself and others along the way, I had learned to forgive myself. Now, years later, I've rebuilt a life that's my own one that isn't defined by anyone else's choices. It's been a painful but necessary path, and though I've made mistakes, I've also found peace with who I am. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not searching for someone to save me. I'm saving myself. When a partner leaves unexpectedly, it can feel like the ground beneath you has been pulled away, leaving you floating in a space filled with confusion and heartbreak. The emotional upheaval that follows such a departure is not merely about the loss of the relationship, but the dissolution of an entire identity that was once tied to another person. Relationships, especially long-term ones, become so intertwined with our sense of self that when they end, we are left questioning who we are and where we belong. The feelings of abandonment and rejection are often overwhelming, and the complexities of these emotions can take time to fully understand. For someone who experiences this emotional upheaval, there's a deep internal struggle. Initially, there is a crushing sense of sadness, a grief that feels all-consuming. It is a mourning process, but not for the person who left alone. It's for the future that will never happen, the shared dreams and promises that have now evaporated. The emotional landscape is clouded with a multitude of emotions: grief, anger, confusion, and self-doubt. The sadness is compounded by the fact that this loss was not something that was foreseen, and the transition from being in a partnership to facing life alone can feel like being dropped into an abyss. Alongside sadness, there is often a simmering anger that takes root. Anger at the partner who has left, but perhaps more profoundly, at oneself. What went wrong? Why was I not enough? These questions loop in the mind, creating an intense feeling of failure and regret. The anger comes from the sense of betrayal and an unmet need for closure. When one person decides to end the relationship, especially without giving the other a chance to resolve issues or prepare emotionally, it feels as if the rug has been pulled out from under them. They are left reeling, not only from the shock of the abandonment, but from the lack of control in their own life. There is nothing that can be done to change the situation, and this feeling of helplessness feeds into the emotional chaos. Another difficult aspect of this emotional turmoil is the immense confusion that accompanies it. In many cases, a partner who leaves does so with little explanation or clarity, leaving behind a vacuum of unanswered questions. Why now? What caused the change in feelings? Was there someone else involved? These questions remain unanswered, and the uncertainty adds to the emotional strain. The lack of closure can make the healing process more complex, as it forces the individual to move on without fully understanding why their world has fallen apart. This confusion can cause a person to oscillate between the desire for answers and the realization that they may never receive them. It can lead to a sense of powerlessness, as the person is left to navigate their emotions without the clarity they need to understand the situation fully. This emotional turmoil, however, is not confined to anger, confusion, and sadness. There is also a deep sense of shame that can surface. Shame about not seeing the signs of the relationship's decline, shame about the choices made in the relationship, or shame for feeling like they were not good enough for their partner. Shame can be insidious. It seeps into the heart and mind, making the person feel like they are somehow less than, as though they have failed as a partner, a spouse, or a lover. This feeling of inadequacy often makes it harder to reach out for support, because there's a fear of being judged or misunderstood. The person may internalize the end of the relationship as a personal failure, rather than recognizing that relationships are complex and both partners contribute to their success or failure. The shame can be so deep that it stops the person from healing, as they cannot forgive themselves for perceived shortcomings. Lastly, there is the emotional isolation that often accompanies the end of a relationship. When a partner leaves, there is often a ripple effect on other aspects of the person's life. Friends and family might not know how to support the person in the aftermath, and in some cases, relationships with loved ones may change or even dissipate altogether. The person left behind might feel abandoned, not only by their partner, but also by their social network. The isolation exacerbates the emotional pain, as it can feel like everyone is pulling away, or at best, simply unsure how to help. This sense of loneliness can magnify the grief and sense of rejection, making it feel as if no one truly understands what they're going through. The emotional toll of this isolation is significant. It forces the individual to cope with their pain alone, which can prolong the healing process and make recovery even more difficult. In sum, the emotional turmoil that accompanies a partner's departure is multifaceted. It involves grief, anger, confusion, shame, and isolation all swirling together to create an overwhelming sense of loss and emotional instability. The complexities of these emotions are not only difficult to navigate in the moment, but can also take years to understand fully. The internal struggle to process these feelings is a delicate journey that often involves confronting both the external reality of the breakup and the internal doubts and fears that come with the loss of love. Understanding and acknowledging the complexity of these emotions is essential for anyone who has faced the heartache of abandonment in a relationship.